Hi everyone, today we'll be going over A-Level Accounting, Paper 4-2. We'll be doing 2023 February-March, Paper 4-2, question number 2. And Paper 4-2 consists of 2 questions. Each of those questions will be of 25 marks. So the total paper for Paper 4 is going to be 50. And the total time limit will be 1 hour, which means that you need to complete each question under 30 minutes. And in this video as well, we will be attempting to solve this question under 30 minutes. Now, without any further delay, let's get started. Simran is a manufacturer who uses activity-based costing, ABC, and she provided the following information for a year about the 2 products which she manufactures. So we have product A and product B, and we are given the information regarding units produced and sold, units returned, selling price per unit, direct material per unit, and direct labor per unit. We're also given information regarding production overheads. So we have 4 different overheads: machine setups, quality inspections, order processing, and depreciation of machinery. And we are given the basis of apportionment right here. Okay, the units which were returned were all found to be faulty and could only be sold for the scrap value of 8 per unit. So we were given information regarding units returned right here, and the price for these, it can only be sold for 8 per unit now. All right, let's have a look at our first question. We need to state what is meant by the term cost driver. So cost driver is the activity which causes the costs to be incurred in our production process. Let's write it down. Cost driver is an activity which causes costs to be incurred in the production process. Okay. For the second part, we need to calculate the total profit or loss made from the production of each product for a year. So we need to prepare a statement for both our product A and product B. So this will be for product A, and we also have product B. Okay, since we're trying to figure out our profit or loss, we will just subtract all of our costs from the revenue. And we can just figure out our net revenue. So we are using the word net here because remember that we were also given units returned. So those will be our sales returns. And in order to figure out our total revenue, we need to subtract the sales returns from the total sales. So let's have a look above. So for product A, the total units sold is given to be 2500, but we also know that 500 of those units were returned. So we need to subtract 500 from the total units, and then we can multiply it by our selling price per unit, which is given to be 50, and this will give our net revenue for product A, and the total is just going to be 100,000. That will be our net revenue for product A, and we'll repeat the same process for product B as well. So we sold a total of 4,600 units, out of which 600 units were returned, so we're just going to subtract it. Now it gives our total net sales unit, and then we'll multiply it by our selling price per unit, which is given to be 72. This gives the net revenue for product B to be 288,000. Let's write these down. So for product A, that will be 100,000. For product B, it's 288,000. Now the next step would be to add our scrap values as well, because we are told that the units which were returned were all found to be faulty and could not be sold and could only be sold for the scrap value of 8 per unit. So in order to figure out the scrap value for product A, we'll just multiply the total units returned by its selling value now, which is $8. So that is just going to be 500. That's the number of units returned, and we'll multiply it by 8, which gives our scrap value for product A to be 4,000. Now we repeat the same process for product B. We have the total units returned to be 600, and we just multiply it by its scrap value of 8 per unit, which gives the total scrap for product B to be 4,800. Let's write these down as well. So 4,000 and 4,800. Okay. Then the next cost that we were given is direct material. So let's figure out the direct material for product A. We are given the kilos of direct material required per unit, and we're also given the rate per kilo. And in order to figure out the direct material per unit, we just have to multiply these two numbers together, because 1.5 kgs of direct materials will be required in order to produce 1 unit of product A, and each kilo of those direct material is going to cost 8.20. Okay, let us just figure out the total for all of the units produced, which is 2500. So that is just going to be 2500. That's the number of total units. Then we just multiply it by our direct material per unit. And in order to figure out the direct material per unit, we just have to multiply the direct materials required per unit, which is 1.5 kilos. And we just have to multiply it by the rate per kilo, which is given to be 8.20. And this will give our total direct material for product A to be 30,750. Now we just repeat the same process for product B. We have the total units produced to be 4,600. Now we just multiply it by direct materials per unit. And we just have to multiply the number of kilos required per unit, which is 3.5, by the rate per kilo, which is given to be 9.5. And this gives our total direct materials for product B to have the value of 152,950. Okay, let's write these two amounts down. And since direct material is a cost, we'll have to subtract it in order to figure out the total profit or loss. Let's move on to our next cost, which is direct labor. And for direct labor as well, we're going to repeat the same process as we did for the direct materials. So we're just going to take the total number of units. Let's start with product A, that's 2500. Then we're just going to multiply it by the direct labor per unit. And in order to figure out the direct labor per unit, we just have to multiply the hours required per unit, which is given to be 2, by the rate per hour, which is given to be 10. And this gives our total direct material cost for product A to be 50,000. Now we just repeat the same process for product B. We'll start with the number of units produced, which is 4,600. Then we multiply it by the direct labor per unit. So that's just going to be the number of hours required per unit, which is 2.5, multiplied by the rate per hour, which is 12. And this gives the total direct materials for product B to be 138,000. Let's write it down. So that's direct labor. And we figured it out to be 50,000 for product A and 138,000 for product B. Okay, we've completed our direct cost, so now we can move towards our overheads. Okay, we are given the total annual cost for machine setups, but we have to portion it to our two different products. So we have to divide it among product A and product B. And the basis for that division is given right here. So machines are set up 80 times for product A and 200 times for product B. So the total setups is just 80 plus 200, which is 280. Okay, so in order to figure out our apportionment towards product A, we just start with our total cost, which is 4,480. And we know that out of the total machine setups, 280, only 80 were for product A. So we're just going to multiply the total cost by its fraction. So that's just going to be 80, which is the number of machine setups for product A, divided by the total machine setups, which is 280. And this gives the machine setup cost for product A to be 1,280. Now we repeat the same process for product B. So we again start with our total cost and we utilize our fraction. So the number of setups for product B is 200. And we just divide it by the total number of setups, which is 280, which results in the machine setups cost for product B to be 3,200. Okay, these two are for our machine setups. Let's write it down. We figured it out to be 1,280 for A and 3,200 for B. Okay. Now we just repeat the same process for the remaining overheads as well. So we are given the total annual cost for quality inspections, and the basis of apportionment is that 40 inspections were done for product A and 60 were done for product B. So the total inspection is just going to be 100. Let's figure out the apportionment towards product A. We start with our total cost, which is 8,000. And the number of inspections for product A was 40 out of the total inspection of 100. This gives the quality inspection cost towards product A to be 3,200. Now we repeat the same process for product B. So that's going to be 8,000 multiplied by 60 divided by 100, which results in 4,800. These are for quality inspections. Let's write it down. So that's 3,200 and 4,800. Okay, now we can move towards order processing. So we have the total 5,500 and 190 orders were for product A and 360 orders were for product B. So the total is just going to be 190 plus 360, which results in 550. Let's figure out its apportionment towards product A. So we start with the total of 5,500. And the number of orders processed for product A was 190 out of the total of 550. This means that our order processing cost for product A is just going to be 1,900. We repeat the same process for product B. We start with the total multiplied by 360 divided by 550, which results in 3,600. So these two are for our order processing. Let's write it down. For product A, that was 1,900, and for product B, it was 3,600. Okay, we have our last one, depreciation of machinery. The total is 15,200, and we're given the net book value. For product A, it's 45,000, and for product B, it's 55,000. So the total is just 45,000 plus 55,000, which results in 100,000. Okay, let's figure out the apportionment towards product A. We start with the total, so that's 15,200, and the net book value for product A is 45,000 out of the total of 100,000. This results in the apportionment of depreciation of machinery towards product A to be 6,840. Now we repeat the same process for product B, so that's 15,200 multiplied by 55,000 divided by 100,000, which results in 8,360. Let's write it down. So we figured it out to be 6,840 and 8,360. Okay. We have included all of our costs, so we can now move towards figuring out our profit for both the products. So we just have to add all of these amounts in order to figure out the profit. For product A, that will be 100,000 plus 4,000 minus 30,750 minus 50,000 minus 1,280 minus 3,200 minus 1,900 minus 6,840, which results in 10,030. Now we repeat the same process for product B. So we just have to add all of these. So that's 288,000 plus 4,800 minus 152,950 minus 138,000 minus 3,200 minus 4,800 minus 3,600 minus 8,360, which results in negative 18,110. So that's a profit. We have to write it down here as well. Okay, this concludes the second part of this question. Let's move towards the third one. And we're given the working section as well. So remember to include all of these workings, all of these that we did before, in that particular box. So you need to show all of your workings so that you get your markings correctly. So make sure you include all of these in the box given below. Okay, we're given additional information. Now, Simran was concerned about the high volume of units being returned, and she believed that the workers were not paying enough attention when assembling the products. She considered installing a system of surveillance cameras in the factory so that the workers could be monitored, and she believed that this would totally eliminate the returns. Simran would rent the camera system for a fixed period of 3 years, and the cost of renting and monitoring the cameras would amount to 18,000 per annum. And Simran decided that this would be added to the cost of the quality inspections, and the increased total would then be allocated on the same basis as before. And for the third part, we need to calculate the revised total profit or loss made from production of each product for a year if the surveillance cameras were introduced and all the returns were eliminated. Okay, so we need to change two things in the above statement that we prepared for our third part. So firstly, all returns were eliminated. So if returns were eliminated, it means that we would not be having any sort of scrap or any sort of unit returns. Let's have a look above. Previously, in order to figure out our net revenue, we subtracted the units returned and then multiplied the remaining units by our selling price per unit. But now there will be no returns. So we can just not consider this at all. And in order to figure out the revenue, we can just multiply our units produced and sold by the selling price per unit. That's one thing that we're going to change. And then we were also told that the cost of renting and monitoring the cameras would amount to 18,000 per annum. And Simran decided that this would be added to the cost of quality inspections, and the increased total would then be allocated on the same basis as before. So now our quality inspections will also be changing. So previously we had 8,000. Now we also need to add another 18,000. So the total annual cost for quality inspections will now be 26,000. So we will be changing our quality inspections, then we will be excluding our scrap, and we will be changing our total net revenue. Let's prepare our statement again. That's for product B. This will be for product A. We'll start with our net revenue. Okay. So let's calculate our revenue for product A. We are just going to multiply the selling price per unit to our total units produced. So that's 2,500 multiplied by 50, which results in 125,000. We repeat the same process for product B as well. So the total units produced is 4,600, and we just multiply it by our selling price per unit of 72. And this will give our net revenue to be 331,200. Let's write it down. Product E was 125,000, and for product B it was 331,200. Now we won't have any scrap for this because there is no returns of the units sold. The direct materials will remain the same because the units produced is still the same. The direct labor is also going to be the same, and machine setup is also going to be the same. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it below because these three things are not going to change. Alright, now our quality inspections will change, so we have to calculate it again. Let's have a look above. Okay, so the total for our new quality inspection is 26,000. So for apportionment towards product A, we start with the total. And 40 inspections is done for product A out of the total of 100. And this will give our new apportionment of quality inspections towards product A to be 10,400. We repeat the same process for B. So that's going to be 26,000 multiplied by 60 divided by 100, which results in the value of 15,600. Let's write it down. So that's going to be 10,400 for A and 15,600 for B. Okay. So we did quality inspections as well. And again, the order processing and depreciation of machinery is not changing. So we can just copy the same amount. I'm just going to copy this as well. Alright. So our statement is now complete since we have included all of our cost. Now we just have to calculate our profit or loss. In order to figure out the profit, we just have to add all of these amounts. For product A, that will be 125,000 minus 30,750 minus 50,000 minus 1,280 minus 10,400 minus 1,900 minus 6,840, which results in 23,830. For product B as well, we repeat the same process. So that's going to be 331,200 minus 152,950 minus 138,000 minus 3,200 minus 15,600 minus 3,600 minus 8,360, which results in 9,490. So previously there was a loss for product B, and now we have profit for both our products. This concludes our third part. Let's move towards the fourth one. We now need to advise Simran whether or not she should install the system of surveillance cameras. We need to justify our answer, and it's of 6 marks. Okay, so firstly, we just said that the production of B turned from a loss to a profit. That is a good thing. Let's write it down. Production of B turns from a loss to a profit. So it also means that the total production goes from a net loss to a profit. If we take a look above, if we add these two, we know that it's going to be a negative amount. So previously we had a net loss for both our products, but after including our surveillance cameras, we can see that both of the products have a profit, which means that there will be a net profit rather than a net loss. We can write it down as well. So the total production goes from a net loss to a profit. Okay, and the next thing that we can include is that after being monitored, the workers might be encouraged to work harder, and that might reduce our direct labor cost. Let's write it down. Being monitored might encourage workers to work harder, which could reduce the direct labor cost. The reduction in direct labor cost is due to the fact that the workers are more encouraged, which means that they might accomplish a greater number of works within lower amount of time. So we have to pay less to the workers. Okay, the next thing that we can write down is that the workers might also feel demotivated due to being constantly watched. Let's write it down. Workers might be demotivated. And since we are including the surveillance cameras now, there might be extra costs such as repairs of those cameras as well as training to the staff in order to use those cameras. Let's write it down. There may be extra costs such as repairs and training. And we're also told that Simran will be renting the camera for a period of 3 years. So it might be cheaper in the long run to buy the cameras rather than renting them. We can write it down. Might be cheaper to buy the cameras rather than renting them in the long run. Okay, now based on these factors, we need to make a decision and advise Simran. Personally, I would advise Simran that she should install the system of surveillance cameras due to the increment in profit. Let's write it down. Simran should install the system of surveillance cameras since it will bring an increment in the profit. Okay, that was the fourth part. Now for the fifth one, we need to comment on the suitability of the cost driver to account for the cost of the surveillance cameras. Okay, first we need to understand the purpose of surveillance cameras. So Simran was basically concerned about the high volume of units being returned, and she believed that the workers, that's the keyword, were not paying enough attention when assembling the products. So she considered installing a system of surveillance cameras in the factory so that the workers could be monitored. So the main purpose of our surveillance cameras is to monitor our workers. And the current basis for the allocation of surveillance cameras is the same as quality inspection, which is the number of inspections done for both our products. Now we can say that the choice of the cost driver does not affect the profit of the business as a whole, because in the end it is all going to be the overhead. So if we add our profit for both product A and product B, then our basis of allocation for these overheads are not going to impact that particular total profit. But the cost is definitely not related to the inspections of our product. The cost is related to our workers, because we're basically installing our surveillance cameras in order to monitor those workers. So we can say that our basis of apportionment that we have been using currently is not correct. So let's write it down. And we can start by saying that the choice of cost driver does not really affect our total profit. The choice of cost driver does not affect the profit of the business as a whole, but the current cost, that is the cost of the surveillance cameras, is definitely not related to the number of inspections taking place. Now, a better way to answer this question would be to also mention an alternative cost driver. So a better cost driver might be the number of workers. Because remember that surveillance cameras were installed in order to monitor our workers. So we might have a better cost allocation among two different products if we figure out the number of workers that are working on each of those products, so that the cameras might also be allocated according to the number of workers in order to monitor them assembling the product. Okay, that's all for this part, which concludes our entire question as well. Now, if you found this video useful, make sure you like the video and leave a comment below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss any of these videos in the future. Thank you.